welcome along to season
4.
Oh, come on, Blake.
It's season 4. It's been a while since we've done one of these.
It's been a while. We lost count all the way to 4.
Mm-hmm. Episode 67.
67. That's fun. So here we go. We're going to try this again. We're knocking the rust off. Sorry that it has been, well, I guess sorry. We're not really that sorry, are we?
No.
We got 10 really good episodes this season.
Yeah.
Or so. 10 or so.
We never lock ourselves into one thing.
That's right.
You know? Who knows?
That's right.
That's what we said on the last the history podcast. It's 10 or so. Who knows what that actually...
Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the history podcast a little bit. But we're gonna switch gears and jump back into your favorite podcast, Sweet Tea and Coffee. And we've got a fun start. We've got a guest all the way from the Big Apple.
Big Apple. What is that?
What's the Big Apple? Are you serious?
I'm not serious.
You completely ruined my introduction.
I'm from Texas.
Oh, I know. Okay, so we got a New Yorker in the house, but he's a Texan, and more specifically, he's a Nacogdochian. Is that a?
Yeah.
Does that work?
I mean, yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all the way from Nacogdoches, from New York, and back to Nacogdoches, we've got Josh Williford in the house with us, and you know him well. Josh has been. He obviously grew up here and has been around since being in New York. He's one of our missionaries and working in Queens at a church in Queens. And we're just going to chat with Josh and hear about his life and journey through ministry and some of their time in New York and what that's been like. But more importantly, we're going to hear about VegoBears.
Yeah, something like that. Vegan.
Okay. Vegan VegoBears.
VegoBears sounds way worse.
Okay. All right. Well, stick around for VegoBears in New York and Josh Williford. Well, in our break, I was corrected. It's VegoBears.
That's right.
Not VegoBears. Neither sound appealing to me, but that's what you ate on the plane on the way over since you were upgraded to...
Comfort Plus.
Comfort Plus.
Comfort Plus. Not just regular Comfort.
Yeah, Comfort Plus. Now, we don't know what the difference is between Comfort Regular and Comfort Plus, nor do we know whether Comfort Plus is the new business class. We know it wasn't first class.
That's right. It wasn't first class.
But we know that Comfort Plus comes with VegoBears in a silver tray.
Silver platter.
Platter.
Extra snacks.
Extra snacks. So, I mean, you flew into Texas in style.
That's right. That's right.
In style, which is the way you roll. But so Josh, you grew up in Nacogdoches. And, people that are catching this podcast may have only heard your name from you're our missionary in New York. And they may have missed the fact that part of your story is that you grew up here in Nacogdoches, that you grew up more specifically. Your family was part of Fredonia Hill.
That's right.
Your dad is and mom are still here, still hanging out. Your dad's one of our elders, unless he's been fired by the time this podcast comes out.
It's possible.
You never know.
Which is totally possible. But tell us about Nacogdoches as a kid. You were sharing that there were some nicknames. You gave some nicknames for Nacogdoches that I had not heard before.
I got a chance to speak with the youth and stand up there, just stranger, and I'm like, okay, they need to know why are we listening to this guy? And so it was cool to be able to actually tell them, I sat in almost literally the seats that you're sitting in, and being a part of the Fredonia youth group and all of that stuff, and then just kind of talking a little bit about life in Nacogdoches and some of the nicknames of Saccharoches and Naca Nowhere, and just here and there, so just kind of break the ice a little bit and get to talk with them. But told them about how elementary school at Central Heights, and I think it was called intermediate school at Mike Moses, which is now an elementary school, and then junior high at T.J. Rusk, which is also now a elementary school, and so just walking through the different schools to let them know, okay, I sort of understand life here. I've been here, lived here for a while. So we moved in when I was 5, and it was just kind of grew up in the area and didn't necessarily want to stick around forever.
Okay, so I got to. So you started at Central Heights,
yeah,
and then moved to Nacogdoches.
That's right.
Wow. that's a different transition. Usually it's like we had people from Nacogdoches come into Central Heights, whatever.
Did you see the we? Did you notice the we there? Blake's pretty
Central
territorial.
Okay, so now here's where it gets fun. So you went to TJR for middle school or junior high. I don't know what they call it. Okay, did y'all do the dance?
He just said intermediate school.
Well, that intermediate was 5th and 6th.
Yeah.
Junior high was 7th and 8th.
Okay. Yeah. All right. You guys go ahead.
So they would do like school dances across the street at the Methodist church in the gym.
Absolutely.
Not the Baptist church.
Yeah, they did not have it down here at the Baptist church. We from Central Heights would find girls to sneak us into because we didn't have dances at Central Heights.
No.
And so we would come crash you.
Okay. Absolutely. We were there. I remember someone brought in a little matchbox. And you would hold the match onto the matchbox and then flick it, and it would light as it goes off. And it's just wild stuff at the junior high dance.
7th and 8th graders, because we definitely weren't dancing. We were all just chilling,
finding ways to get around the church instead of.
It was just loud music.
I think there was a movie playing in one room.
Yeah,
I don't even.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine the leadership of that church being okay with everything like having that dance there. We would not do that in a million years. I would have a nervous breakdown if I knew that was happening here, but they did.
Like, the thing that I can't imagine is you being snuck into a dance.
Yeah. We had some friends that went to TJR, and they would put us on the list to get in.
On the list.
Yeah.
I would love to see a movie of Blake at
there was no dancing to be had.
No
sure.
way. No way.
That was just where the fun was happening.
And all the parents that just heard this like match flicking thing.
I think at one point they had like Newsboys music videos playing up on the roof on one of them. They tried.
That's pretty epic. Okay, so what was life like growing up in Nacogdoches? What was your family involved in? What were your hobbies? What did you guys like to do as a kid? Just tell us a little bit about growing up.
Yeah, like everyone in Nacogdoches, sports was kind of a big deal with kids, and that's what I think I remember the most is just all the different sports stuff, whether it was soccer or baseball, basketball. Just we very much involved in a lot of the sports stuff, and then church as well. To be honest, whenever I was growing up, I was not a very in-tune child with my surroundings. I was very self-consumed, and it was pretty much like almost like an apathy of I don't really care what's going on around me. I'm just going to do whatever it is I'm going to do,
just
and then that's it, And so there wasn't a lot. I think even living here, I couldn't tell you if someone was like, "Hey, on North Street, if you turn and then turn down," and they start naming streets, I had no idea. Driving, I would be like, "Is that the McDonald's?" Like I don't. Or we're talking Burger King. Where am I supposed to be turning?
Knew landmarks.
Landmarks. That's it. And so, but it was cool. We had a really good core group of friends that grew up around the same time and started playing ball together and just kind of grew up in life with each other, coming to church here. So that was helpful, to have a good group of friends making choices. Either way, good or bad, but still people to hang out with and that were a part of the church as well.
I was going to say, so where did that friend group for you come from? Was that mainly from school? Was that from church? Was that your family's friends? What was that like? Yeah,
I think a lot of it was family friends, but also where the paths crossed. And most of the paths crossed either church or athletics, So the ones that did stick and cross with both at church and within sports and things like that, those were the kind of the closer relationships. Mm-hmm. The Phillips family, little David, running buddies forever, and so hanging out all the time, getting called brothers and twins at points because I think we would, during our less able to make our own decisions times, they would buzz our heads because they didn't want to worry about haircuts or whatever, and so we would look pretty similar. And it's terrible times, but
we're gonna have to find some pictures.
I think they've been burned. They've been burned, but yeah, it was good, and then just being a part of the church for as long as I can remember. Being up here at Fredonia Hill and just being involved in whatever it was, whether it was RAs, whether it was choir, children's choir, drama stuff. I mean, it was whatever was being offered, we were up here and a part of it.
Yeah. So what? I mean, you're here all the time. You've got to give us at least some good Fredonia Hill story. Man. Like I remember in this room, you just give us a good blast from the past Fredonia Hill story as a kid.
There's a few different ones that come to mind, but some of these places don't even exist anymore. But I always think in what is now the Zone.
We had name dropping. Way to go!
Yeah, well, yeah,
that's pretty good. You were in the Zone.
That's right. Okay. That's right. We had RAs, and one of the first things that I remember about RAs wasn't just like the cars that you would make and race them and do the derbies, right? But they would teach Bible verses, and we would memorize scripture. And I think, and I may get in trouble, I was a little nervous coming on here because I was like, man, people are going to know some of these things, and they're going to fact check me. But I think it was Big David, Mr. Phillips, that quoted a verse in Proverbs about how it is better to live in the corner of a house than with a quarrelsome wife. That was like an early memory of a verse of scripture that just stuck with me.
I feel like I've heard him say that
probably. Probably.
I guarantee you're right. No fact check needed. We have heard that many times.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's funny. Well, and you're obviously spent a lot of time with your dad, and he tells some non-podcast. We're not going to tell them on here, but tell some pretty funny stories about you and Phillips boys, and so that's
around
cool.
with BB guns and all sorts of things.
Oh yeah,
yep.
Oh yeah. Well, people will maybe remember back all the way to episode. What was it? 12?
Yeah, it was early first season.
Yeah. So your dad Bryn was on here, and a big part of their story. Was the loss of a child,
right?
And I was trying to get timeline right, and you said you were in about the first grade, and that was pretty quick after your family had moved here, right? Am I remembering that right? Or not moved to Nacogdoches, but pretty quick after they'd become part of the church anyway, and so a big part of their story is just the community surrounding them and supporting them during that time. You were young. I mean, what do you remember about that? Watching your family go through such a difficult thing. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, at that age, first grade, he was born. Second grade, I think, is when he ended up passing. You're not fully aware of everything that's going on, and even to the sense of what is normal and what is not normal. Yeah. So there was a lot of it that was just life. There wasn't an option to choose something differently. Yeah. And so you just worked through things differently. But there were some good memories that I have and slight ones, that I can recall. A lot of hospital memories, a lot of going in cars and saying goodbye and having grandparents stay, or when the church would do the Adopt a College Student program. Yeah. A lot of college students would come and hang out with me and babysit and do that kind of thing while my parents were out and taking care of Jacob. And so it's something that I don't know well. I don't remember awesome, but there are just small aspects of it. Like I remember well the night that he passed away. I could tell you what snack I was eating. I could tell you where I was sitting in the house when we had to rush into the car. Like that. That's a very vivid one, and even the process after that of the mourning and the going through. I don't remember what my parents were doing in any of that. I don't remember kind of how they handled it, because I guess everything just kind of continued forward. It wasn't like we stopped life as it was, and maybe that was their way of making sure I was protected in all of that time and making sure I was taken care of, that they kind of let life flow on. But again, like I said, I don't remember there being just a point of, just a broken sense or feeling within the house.
Yeah. Well, that says a lot about the community that was around you, about the way that your parents dealt with it. I know I've had moments where, as an adult, I'm having conversations with my parents about their journey. Yeah. You're not asking those questions as a kid.
Right.
You're not interested in, what their journey was like, what following Jesus was like for them. You're just, like you said, it's there's a normal, and you're just kind of in your world living your normal. it wasn't for me until I, into college and into adulthood where I started going, man, I want to know some things. I want to hear what their journey has been like, what their story was like, and have really been challenged, grown in my faith. Like just there's a perspective that's really healthy to have as you listen to your parents tell their story. Has that been something that looking back as you've heard their journey and talked through things with them, that you've connected dots on just like what they were going through during that time? And I don't know, does the reflection process, has that been...
There was definitely some conversations. I think most of that probably came with our own daughter and the issues that we were having with her, and then the conversation that I was able to have with my parents on how they dealt with someone who was in a, child crisis mode. And just the comfort that was brought there, not necessarily like here's what to do and how to do it and 1, 2, 3 kind of stuff, but just the care and the trust and the faith that are associated with kind of those moments.
Yeah. Well, I want to get there. We've got to get to JJ and Jonah here in a little bit, but I don't want to jump too fast. We skip too much. So okay, so growing up, playing basketball, playing sports, and then off to school. Where for you was a point where, because obviously people know, man, you're missionary, serving in New York, pastor on staff at a church. Where did you begin to start feeling like maybe the Lord was calling you into vocational ministry? Was that something early on? Was that later? Where does that start happening?
Yeah, I was saved at a VBS here at Fredonia, and I remember there being, giant keys that were the different colors, like the red, the black, the green, the yellow, and going through the different colors, and but keys to the kingdom is, I think, was the thing. And so I remember that, sitting in the pews and praying, and that just being kind of an obvious choice that was before me. One, though, that I knew I had to make for myself. Like, it wasn't something that had already just magically happened. I needed to choose to follow him. But I don't know that I would say I was invested in my faith as much as I probably should have been until thinking like even college, post-college time. It was, again, one of those that it's been so familiar that, in all honesty, was easy. The faith came easy because it was just common. And it wasn't something that I had to search for, ask questions about. But there was a time in college where someone was talking, one of my professors was saying, someone tell me the life of Paul. And I'm like, who's Paul? It's like, Paul, the guy that wrote most of the New Testament. Tell me his conversion story. And I'm like, I have no idea. Like, I couldn't tell you. How many books of the Bible did he write? I don't know how many books of the Bible he wrote. And one of them was pretty convicting, and I don't know many Christians that if you had to name all 12 disciples, could you do it? And I was like, oh, I don't know if I could do it. Even now, I'm like, let me get my Bible out. But so that was a moment where it was like, I don't know that I understand and know everything that I'm supposed to know. Now, there was still a genuine faith. I believed in Jesus. I had put my trust in him, and I recognized him to be Lord and Savior, but my knowledge didn't follow through. It was almost like an obvious choice, a checklist. Now I'm done with this, and I can just move on. But my love for the church had been there, and I don't know if it was from my parents or being up here all the time. My dad was a janitor here at Fredonia for a while. Then early high school, I became a janitor up here and spent most of my high school after school days up and moving chairs and vacuuming and cleaning up at the academy and things like that. I don't know if all of that kind of played into my love for the church and just getting to see the ins and outs, the non-Sundays, the non-Wednesday days of office work and how church worked. But I'd always just had this connection with the church and loved it, loved being a part of it. It wasn't where my parents had to wake me up and be like, we got to go to church today. It was like, no, I'm ready. Let's go. Let's do it. And so the connection there, I recognized that church was always important, that it was something that was important in my life. And if I wanted to be a good Christian, if I wanted to follow Jesus well, I needed to be in church. Church was important. But it wasn't until a Old Testament class, 8 a.m. I think it was 8 a.m. Old Testament class. Everyone's super excited to be there in college, right? This is a forced class at a private university.
Yeah, where are you going? Okay.
Howard Payne. Okay. Howard Payne University in Brownwood. And this is one that everyone had to take, no options. And
you chose the 8 a.m.
8 a.m. There it was, yeah. And so I'm sitting in class. I have no idea what we're even talking about. I can't remember. But I'm sitting there looking at my notes, looking at the professor, and then it just like something clicks and I go, wow, this is super interesting. Like I've never understood these things like this before. And I'm either taking notes or writing something. I look around and most of the class is asleep, right? Heads and hands, elbows on the table, just like, when can this be done? And it was in that moment that I was really like, why aren't they as interested in it as I am? What's happening that I'm connecting with this, but they're not? Why don't they get it? And I really felt like the Lord said, you need to teach them.
Wow.
You need to teach them. And now both of my parents were teachers. Were in the school systems, and there was one job that I did not want no matter what happened, and that was to be a teacher. And so I think God in his humor was like, all right, fine, you won't work in a school, but you're going to teach Scripture, You're going to teach in the church. And so I followed through and informed, my family, informed Fredonia, and everyone, no one was surprised by it. Everyone was like, yeah, we thought that would probably be what you did. And I'm like, well,
nobody told me that.
Yeah, come on. Like, someone knew this before me. What was happening?
Yeah.
Maybe that was the conversation. Again, my apathy, my unawareness of the world around me, that I just didn't pay attention to things. But yeah, it was confirmed and just reaffirmed by the church and just tried to start walking in that a little.
Well, so I imagine that probably sparks quite a journey where you realize there's maybe a gap in your knowledge, but now all of a sudden there's a fire lit that I want to know these things. Right. I want to dive deep, not just because I want to know them for myself, but because I want to share. There's something life-giving here that I feel like the Lord's asked me to share with others. So what was that journey like kind of after that match was lit and you began to pursue? That was early in college. So what was it like? Yeah,
it was freshman year in college, and so I was trying out for the basketball team, and already kind of gotten into the team but it wasn't nothing formal, anything. We went through a tryout period, but I realized I wasn't going to be able to do basketball and this church thing. Like it was just too much. So I ended up giving the basketball up and pursuing all of the church world and just trying to understand some of that. But I would even argue that most of that kind of stuff, it came pretty easy. It wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't hard. It was, study, take a test. And the Bible became a textbook. And so, I would learn it. It would be, it'd be something that I understood. But one of my professors really kind of called us out on some of it by saying, that was his experience, that the Bible had become a textbook when you study it. And so what are you going to do to reinvigorate it as the Word of God, life-giving Word of God, not just words on a paper that you have to take a test over and write papers on, which is even applicable when we talk about sermons.
Oh, man.
It's more than just something that you are translating and working on to give commentary to on a piece of paper, but it's for me. Like the Word of God is for me. What am I doing with it? And so I don't know that I fully understood that until I got out of college. And I actually had to start putting things into practice, real life practice. That's where I started to say, okay, is this stuff, I don't understand it. I don't know it. I need to if I'm going to teach and talk to people about all of this. So the knowledge was kind of back there, but it wasn't one of those where I was passionately pursuing it. It was just a part of the road and a part of the process. It wasn't until I got involved in teaching and speaking that it was really, it became something that I was like, all right, this is the thing in my life that I need to focus in on. And that's what I tell people all the time. You can study the Bible, it's great. When you start doing it, makes all the difference in the world. Makes all the difference in the world.
And when you say doing it, you mean not just teaching it, not giving instruction.
That's right.
You mean living it out.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, private Baptist college, studying the Bible, no one's going to come up to you and be like, how dare you be a Christian at a private Baptist university? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But once you get out of college and you have to interact with people who maybe don't have the faith that you have, it becomes one of those where you have to choose. You know, you're gonna be a part of the community as culture, or are you going to be part of the culture of the church and the culture of Christ?
Wow. Now, at some point, do you and Gail meet at Howard Payne?
We do. We meet the first weekend of Howard Payne, like freshman orientation.
Wow. Okay. So I mean, are you guys friends, dating? How quickly? I mean, so she's involved in this process on some
That's right.
level with you of call and that developing. And so how did y'all meet? And
well, we like I said, we met at kind of the end of freshman orientation. They have this big block party, you know, they get inflatables and snow cones and the Baptist stuff. All right. This is, yeah.
Was it at the Methodist church?
No. It was in the yard there. But honestly, she was just the only girl that talked to me. Okay, I'm not very good at going out to people and starting conversations. And so she had lived in Jacksonville at one point in her life. And so there was an East Texas connection. I knew where that was. And she knew where Nacogdoches was. And so she carried the conversation, and I just pretty much followed her around the rest of that day. And our little friend group went to Whataburger that night.
Oh,
so
okay. All great things.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And the next day we had an off day before classes started, and so, you know, suave as I am, I said, "Hey, do you want to go figure out where our classes are before?"
Done.
Right. I mean, obviously, I knew where my classes were.
Yeah, it seems responsible, but
exactly.
really you've got an agenda.
Yes. And so she said yes, and honestly, we've just never stopped hanging out. It was pretty much that. We would just hang out and be around each other daily, and so we were dating quickly after that, and knew that God was probably putting us together within the fall of the first semester.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. When did y'all get married?
We got married after graduation, though. We did not get married very quick. So 2009, we got married.
Okay. You waited till just right after that.
Yep.
Graduation.
It was kind of one of those that my parents said, if you want us to continue to help with college, then we suggest
and you said
wait.
yes, please.
Okay, all right, we'll wait.
Yeah. We can do that.
Yep.
We can do that. That's cool. So she's part of that formation journey as well, and having going on her own journey with the Lord. Right after school, you guys kind of launched straight into ministry, right?
That's right.
I mean, right after you graduate, what was your entrance into ministry like?
We went to a small town north of Abilene called Avoca. They have a Lueders Avoca consolidated school district up there, and it is a small town. Small. Probably.
How many people?
Probably about 50.
Nice.
And the church itself had 7 pews on each side. Right, total. That was it.
Enough for the whole town.
That's it. But there were 2 churches, a Baptist and a Methodist, of course.
Classic.
The high school was there, and then a post office. That was it. That was the whole town. There was nothing else. No grocery stores, no gas stations, nothing like that. But we heard about it and went and visited, and just felt like, okay, this is where God may want us. And so we moved there. We spent 5 years doing bivocational youth ministry up there.
Wow.
She had various jobs in Abilene. I was working part-time up at the school doing all the sub stuff, being a janitor at the school, since that was in my history, and working as a lunch lady and secretary and math teacher and whatever it was that they needed.
Wow.
So we really had a really great opportunity to ingrain ourselves into the community, and that's really what it was. It was a tight-knit community, and they just welcomed us in. I've heard many people talk about their first church experiences, ministers and stuff, and not always being great experiences.
Right.
But ours was awesome. We love that place. We love those people because they loved us just so well. Took us in, cared for us.
Well, that's a unique way to start ministry in a community like that. It's a unique setting.
Yep.
Our journey is somewhat similar. I started youth ministry in Sundown. It's a little bit bigger. It had a gas station.
There you go.
And now a Subway, and Blake likes Subway.
Just like the one in Tanzania.
Just like in Tanzania. But that's a story for a different podcast. But it is, I mean, those kinds of communities are really unique.
Yep.
And so for that to be the beginning of your journey into vocational ministry, I think is really formational, really important. And it's interesting thinking about the work that you do now in Queens and the way that you're wanting the community and the church to be so woven together. I mean, I see that now. Is that something you're learning in that very first job? I mean, what is unique? What do you learn? What perspective do you gain from being in a setting like that? Yeah,
it's all about people. It's all about people, and that's what that first ministry exposure and opportunity. It gave us freedom to try things, to experiment a little and to fail and to succeed and be willing to sit through a 10-minute sermon. That was my first one, and just experience a lot of those things. And so I actually think there's a lot of similarity between the church that we started in small town Avoca, Texas, and the church that we're at right now in Queens, New York City. There's a community aspect, and that's what people are really drawn to is the community. The preaching can be great, the music can be great, but if the community is not welcoming, if it's not, no one's going to care. They're not going to want to be there, or they're not going to be there for long. And so it's just it's unique to see how God weaves some of these things together, and I think it's not by accident. I just can't help but just appreciate the story that God's letting us live out. Yeah, that is neat to think about the similarities between the two places and what you're doing now and where you started. Well, but you didn't go straight from Texas to Queens. There were some stops along the way. What did kind of that journey look like as you guys continued to pursue ministry? You're 5 years in Avoca. Yeah. What was next? Yeah, again, 5 years there. During that time, we had looked at what international missions would look like for us. We went and spent a month in Sudan, South Sudan, Africa. Just kind of seeing if God might be calling us there. We looked at going through the International Mission Board to see if God might be calling us there. And we just got to the place where we had, quite literally shared the gospel with everyone we could in the community. Like anyone that was coming, they knew who we were, they knew what we were about, they understood all of that. And so they had kind of made their choice whether or not, they were going to be a part of it. And so we just felt like, okay, it's getting to be time where we need to take the next step for us as a family. And so I got a call from a church in Georgetown, and it was one of those where it was a full-time gig, and just throwing out in my world at that time just outlandish numbers and opportunities and things like that in terms of population, in terms of a salary, all of those things. But it came down to, and this is the conversation that God and I had, was you're going to have the opportunity to reach more people in Georgetown than you do where you are now. There's more people that need to know. There's more opportunities, and so let's go where the bigger need is for now. And it wasn't, no angel visit, no dramatic, this is where you need to go kind of thing. It was just, there's more people there. Let's go there. Let's be a part of that community. Well, that seems important to share. Like there was no angel visit. There was no... Absolutely. And you and I have had lots and lots of conversation and just about just kind of even your personality and what hearing from God looks like. And we've talked about sometimes how when... just in church settings, when people hear about hearing from the Lord, a lot of times it gets narrowed down into a very specific personality type, a very specific way in which the Lord speaks. Why is that an important part of your story, that in those moments the Lord is speaking to you in ways that you understand, in ways that you process? That's really unique to your specific relationship with the Lord. Why is that important for us to hear, that God can speak in
variety of different ways.
Well, it speaks to God's relationship that he has with each one of us.
Yeah.
That it's not a God that's just putting out messages and we have to decipher the messages that he puts out.
Yeah.
But he's putting them out in a way in which we can understand and we best comprehend as individuals. Yeah. And again, for me, like you said, it is more that logical process that he and I discuss, and that's what it is. It's just back and forth, and it's not even an instant thing. It's not a moment where everything just clicks, but it's a conversation. It's okay, I'm going to take the next step. We'll see if I'm going to pursue that. It's just a process, and it is for me. It's always important, especially someone who moves their family to New York City, to let people know that this isn't always how God works, and yes, there are some crazy things that God has allowed our family to go through and be a part of, but it's always in line with God's character. God's not changing who he is. He's just changing how he interacts with us versus other people. And sometimes it is, okay, I want that God to be a part of my life. Well, it's the same God. It's the same God. It's just he's trying to speak to you in your way, but you're trying to listen how other people listen. I don't know if that makes sense, but I am passionate about trying to say, like, there is not just special divine information that some people have and other people don't. It's all relationship. It's all the time you spend with the Lord in his word and just talking with him.
Well, and man, and thank you for that, because I think I think a lot of people put a lot of pressure on themselves to hear God, and like you said, and I love the way you phrase that there's some divine message out there that some people can get to, and I think that's where it gets really pressurized is this panic of, okay, I need to hear God, and I've got to hear God in the way that that Blake may articulate that, and if I don't, it's what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my relationship with the Lord? And in reality, is God is present and speaking and interacting with us in ways that we can't understand. So it completely depressurizes the process, and it's saying, I believe that God is good enough to speak to me as my Father in ways that I can understand and need to know, and I'm not going to have to panic and find his voice. So I think it's a really important message. And your family has experienced God's voice in that way, lead you along at so many different stages of the journey, and he's been faithful.
That's right.
At every step. So you go to Georgetown. Now you guys spend some time
about 6 years
in Georgetown, and what's that like? And because next is the big move after Georgetown. So give us a summary, and kids come into play here pretty soon. And so what's Georgetown like?
I don't suggest or recommend what we did for anybody else necessarily.
That's your disclaimer.
Yeah, because Gail was pregnant at the time that we moved, and so a lot of people in Avoca were very upset because we didn't have kids while we were there, and then when we were going to have kids, then we moved.
Yeah.
But we moved, she was pregnant, we had a kid, we started new jobs, new place, no family. I mean, all the things, right? All the things.
All the change at once.
Exactly. And it was not our best year. That first year, it was probably one of the more difficult years, even in family life, in ministry, just working through all the change, all the difference. It was one of those where I had sought to say, okay, God, I think we made a mistake here. Maybe I misheard. Maybe something was off. It's time for me to go. I need to go somewhere else. But God wouldn't allow it. Literally to the point where I'm thinking resumes, I'm putting things together, I'm looking at job opportunities, and God just shuts door after door after door. And so we end up staying in Georgetown, and what a good God we have. He knows so much better what is for us than we do. And it was, again, just another great time and a great community to be a part of as we walk through life and get to journey through some of the things that were going to come. With JJ, with our move to New York City, it was the place we needed to be for those things to be a part of our lives.
Okay, be a little more specific there. I mean, what kind of things happen there that prepare you? So Jonah's born. your first is
Right,
born.
that's correct.
In Georgia,
In
while you guys are
Georgetown.
in Georgetown, and JJ is not far behind, right? I mean,
Yeah, about a little under 2 years behind.
Okay. So kind of take us through some of the things that happen there that are foundational, prepare you, like you said, for what's coming.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking in terms of ministry wise, I start to understand more about what culture is, how to recognize a culture of a church, and how to prioritize a culture of a church over preferences, over other things that maybe aren't as important, and why the importance of maintaining the same culture within the church is, like, why that's important. And I was over youth ministry, and so it's easy for youth ministry to kind of have its own culture, have its own identity, and really have be a microcosm of the church, like have a mini church within a church, right? They do their own music, their own Bible studies, their own sermons, and they go on their own mission trips, and they do their own camps, and it can easily be a place where the two separate, the main church and the youth. And so I kind of recognize that this is not a good thing. It's not a healthy thing. And so I really worked hard on maintaining a similar culture throughout the entire church and youth group that was coinciding with the church at large, which meant for us, we didn't do youth-specific mission trips. We just did mission trips, and we would just send youth with the other ones, and youth were just kind of interwoven into everything that the church was doing. Yeah. And so I started, again, understanding the importance of maintaining a singular culture within a church and how that's beneficial. But then a couple of years in, once we have Jonah and Gail gets to be able to serve and work at the church as our parents' day out director, kind of like a mom's day out thing, 2 days a week. She's serving in that role. Then she becomes pregnant with JJ, and we don't know anything. JJ's going to have some medical issues that we deal with, but we don't know any of that beforehand. And so he just sets us up in a space with the perfect people to support us, whether that's in prayer, which was huge, whether that was financial, but also with jobs and opportunities that would allow us to take space and care for our family while everything still flowed well. Nothing kind of was able to, or nothing had to stop for it to keep doing what was necessary for the church and for our family.
Wow. So you only, that's a perspective that you only have looking back.
Sure.
That you see the ways that the Lord goes before you and prepares the way.
That's right.
And you don't, sometimes those pieces do not make sense at all as you're experiencing them, but looking back, you can clearly see where the Lord is active in ways that you could have never imagined in the moment. So you alluded to JJ and the coming medical challenges. She's born. That's quite a moment. What take us into that? Give us
So we thought it was a normal pregnancy. Everything was going to be great. We're going to have a new child, welcome him in, and just keep moving with life. But JJ was born, and she wasn't breathing. She just wouldn't breathe at the beginning. And so when she was born, they couldn't get her to start breathing, and so they rushed her out of the room instantly. Didn't say anything. We weren't informed. There was nothing. And so
oh my goodness.
I'm there with Gail and just kind of reassuring her it's going to be okay. They're taking care of her. They're doing whatever they needed to do. And that was really my focus, right? And so I wasn't even trying to think about what was happening or why or anything like that. I'm just trying to comfort her in that time. And then what we come to find out is pretty much everything wasn't working well. Heart was not well. The lungs weren't well. There was a brain issue that was needed to be dealt with. It could have been understood and seen beforehand, but it was just missed. No one knew, didn't see it coming, and so she was born with something called the vein of Galen malformation, and what that is all the vessels or a lot of the vessels in the middle of your brain kind of come together and make kind of a balloon or a pool, and that blood just kind of circulates inside of that instead of flowing out and through the body. Right. It just kind of sinks in there, and it keeps brain tissue from growing. So she's got kind of like this large void inside of her brain of just empty. that there's no tissue, then that doesn't come anymore. That doesn't grow, that doesn't develop later on in life. And but at the time, the main concern was she wasn't breathing, lungs weren't working.
Yeah, right.
So they hook her up, get her breathing, get her, taken care of in that issue, and they can't care for her in Georgetown, so they fly her, I think helicopter her, to Austin, and just 30 minutes down the road. And we're not far behind, so me and my dad, I think, hop in the car and go down. And Gail comes a little bit later. She's released within, I don't know, maybe 4 to 5 hours after giving birth, and comes in. And I don't know if she released or she escaped. I'm not really sure what happened because I wasn't
incredible.
there.
Yeah.
But she shows up, and we are in the NICU and all of that kind of stuff. She wasn't premature or anything, but that was just the best place to care for her. And so they were working through what's the primary issue. That was the big thing. What is the issue that needs to be dealt with? There's heart things where valves weren't working and stuff was not happening as it should. There was lung issues. There was the brain thing. So what needed to be fixed first? And that was where we kind of kept going back and forth. And it was a period of about a week that felt like, a month and a half, 2 months, where we were told different things. And ultimately they decide, okay, you need to go to Dallas, to Children's Hospital, Dallas Children's. And we think it's the heart. The heart needs to be taken care of. Something that's going on, it's not allowing the blood to flow correctly. And the heart's the center of it. So we think if we can get the heart fixed, everything else will work. We're like, well, we don't know any better. So I guess, let's go. And so she gets to fly on this jet to Dallas, and Gail and I drive up after her, and we get to the hospital, and the first thing that they do is check her, make sure that why she's here is the reason that she's actually here. And then we get some doctors that come in, some cardiologists that say, hey, so we know why you're here, but we don't think that's the most important reason. And so we think, well, okay, what's going on then? Well, we think the brain needs to be worked on first. And so at this point, we're like, who do we believe?
Yeah.
Who? I mean, you're both doctors, right? So there's a group of doctors in Austin telling us that, hey, you need to fix the heart thing, and they send us to this specific hospital because of the heart and cardiological, department. Mm-hmm. And now those people that were here that are supposed to fix things are saying, hey, it's not the heart, it's the brain. And so we get to this point where we're like, we don't know who to believe, so can we get someone else to walk us through, and just kind of dealing with that. And this is all within a day, maybe day and a half, because, things have to be taken care of.
There's not a lot of time.
Right, it's life and death. And so come to find out, right? That's always a good God phrase. Come to find out, there is a doctor who performs procedures on vein of Galen malformations, which is a very, very rare thing within the country. There's only maybe 2 or 3 hospitals that have doctors that do this kind of procedure. And this one had done hundreds of them.
Wow.
And so, again, it's one of those ways in which God just provides. I don't know if they would have sent us there if that's what they thought, that the brain needed to be taken care of, but God knew that was the hospital we needed to be at. And so once we decide, okay, this is what needs to happen for JJ, the doctor comes in and
wait. So hold on, that guy's at the hospital that you're at?
The one in Dallas that we're at.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And so very interesting doctor, not very personable.
Yeah.
Has basically a PR person with them to talk and do all. Yeah, pretty much.
Interesting.
But I'm sure you have to be that to work surgery on young children and just kind of the difficulty that comes with that.
Sure.
But very, very matter of fact. So, they came in. She's got a 10% mortality rate. It's 10% likely that she's going to survive this procedure.
Wow.
90%, she's probably not going to. I mean, they start telling us stories about all the things that could go wrong.
Oh my gosh!
And what to expect, and afterwards, they'd have no idea. The life expectancy would be very low, and all this stuff. Like, well, what other option do we have?
Yeah,
I mean, at this point, it's either do this or do nothing. So I guess we'll do this.
Yeah.
And so they go through the procedure, and everything gets done. But about a couple days later, they say, well, not everything was done. We're going to have to do that same procedure again. And there is, again, only a 10% chance that she's going to survive. And we're going to have to go through a different vein and just all this stuff, right? All the medical things that they talk to you about. And so it was during that time where we had really started to lean more and more on the church, and we had started communicating what all was going on. She was born on a Sunday, and so that Sunday night, the church Crestview in Georgetown had their Sunday evening service and just spent time praying for us and our family. That Sunday, someone had given $1,000 towards us to just take care of things for now. And we just felt the community of God surround us in prayer. It was a strange time. It was almost an unusually peaceful time where it was stressful. We were having to work these things out, but at the same time, it almost wasn't even a surprise. And I know that sounds really strange, but given the things that I had gone through with my brother, Gail has a special needs sister. We had dealt with some child issues within our families and seen it before. Yeah. So the understanding that this is a possibility, I mean, it was there. And for me, it was like, okay, I'd kind of worked through in my own mind at times, what would I do if this had happened? And I kind of already played it out. Wow. Am I going to trust the Lord or am I not? And maybe that sounds really morbid, I don't know. But if these things happen in my life, what is my response going to be? And so I already knew that faith was still going to be there, that it was still an important, it was necessary for me to maintain my faith in Christ no matter what happens. And so that first procedure moment, I remember going into the Ronald McDonald House. They have a little chapel there, and just praying and asking God to remove it. Like He can, sure. He could just tomorrow morning as they're getting ready to do the procedure and they're checking everything over, He could totally say, actually, everything's as it should be. And I believe that and I know that. But if He doesn't do that, then do whatever is necessary, and we'll trust You in it. And thankfully, God again does, and gets her through those couple procedures and a few more weeks at the hospital, and just having people come and visit and pray and send notes and encouragement and collect money for us to be able to pay for doctors and hotels and food and all that stuff. We never hurt spiritually or financially during that time. Wow. We were so well supported by the church. It wasn't even a thing. It wasn't even a thing. We didn't have to worry about any of that. It's just the beauty of what the church ought to be and is. It's not even what it ought to be. It's what the church is and does so often that most of us don't even know. Yeah. We don't even see it happening. But it's beautiful and it's supportive and again, it's just reinvigorated my love for the church that was already there.
Wow, that's cool. Even thinking about, as you're telling this story, it's crazy in so many ways, so many different circumstances, but literally having sat here with your dad,
the parallels,
and him tell the exact same story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
just in our moments of question, difficulty, tragedy, the church being there, holding us up, you being born into that being your family story, and then experiencing that's really incredible. Yeah. So she beats all the odds, right? Overcomes all the odds. Your time though in Georgetown is coming closer to an end, and you guys begin to think maybe the Lord is is moving you.
Yeah.
Is calling you to a strange foreign land.
That's right.
What's that journey like? And
Yeah.
How do you end up in NYC?
Yeah, I mean, our life is pretty much consumed with JJ for the next couple of years of getting her, all the care that she needs and all of that stuff. But it's interesting, again, God doing what only God does, works things in which we don't understand out for His great plan. We are a part of a church that goes out and does this kind of week-long VBS style camp. Where it is 8:30 to 4 o'clock all day, 1 week, and we've done that in multiple places up in the Pacific Northwest, Oregon, Washington area, in southern Texas, and then they were looking to say, okay, where else could we go to take this camp? And so an opportunity came to go to Phoenix, Arizona. And we had made plans. We've got a team together, and we're going to go and take this camp to Phoenix, Arizona, and everything fell through. Nothing worked, but everyone was ready. We had the supplies, we had the people, the finances were in place, and this one couple comes up and says, hey, we know a guy who's in New York City. You could go and do it there. And our first reaction was, I don't think so. I don't think so. That's probably not. That's probably not it. But this church had a connection with a Romanian pastor that went back 15, 17 years, I guess at this point, where they met him when he was just married and followed his ministry throughout Romania into Moldova, and then him moving to New York City to help with this Romanian church in New York City. And so they knew of that story. We didn't really know much of that story, but they kind of kept in touch and knew that story. And so we decided to go. And if the Lord opened it up, we'd never been. We didn't do any sort of vision trip to see the rooms that were available or how. We had no idea. But we just showed up and said, okay, this is what we're going to do, I guess. And it was on that first trip. We took Jonah. My wife Gail went also, and the first day that we're going to the church, the very first day, Saturday morning, it is pouring down rain. And in New York City, especially where we are, you walk almost everywhere. And so even in the rain, you just walk, and the buses weren't going in that specific area. And we had one lady who was the director of the camp who was over it. I mean, she'd been doing this for 20 plus years. She had taken it to the Pacific Northwest. She'd helped start the one in South Texas. Like, she understood how this stuff's supposed to work outside of this Texas, Georgetown community.
Yeah.
Well, I say something. I don't even remember. I say something, and she turns back and looks at me. And at that same moment, steps on a curb and just rolls her ankle, breaks it, shatters it.
Man.
It's one of those where it's kind of just hanging there. And
goodness.
So at that moment, we're calling ambulances and we're trying to figure stuff out. And we are, this is first day in New York City. I don't even know how ambulances work in New York City. Is 911 still a thing in New York City?
Yeah.
I guess. And so someone's calling 911, someone's calling the church, it's pouring down rain. And so she ends up going to the hospital. A lady goes with her, and the whole time they're in the ambulance, she's writing notes about the camp. Like, her ankle is hanging, and she's got a notebook down writing, here's what they need to do. Monday's going to have
to hand this off.
Yes. Yeah. And so we get to the church, and I'm the only other staff member on this trip. And so they all turn and look at me and like, all right, Josh, what are we going to do? I don't know. I have no idea. Like, I was here just because we brought youth on the trip, and I'm responsible for them. Yeah. I don't know what we're gonna do for this camp. I've never run this kind of thing before. And so that year, we pretty much had to throw everything out the window. Not completely, but in the sense of what we understood to be what was going to happen. And so we started from ground zero and said, what are we trying to do? What's the community? How are we going to do it? And we just revamped it to make it work. And everyone stepped in to do different things that they hadn't planned on. And it was a wonderful time, not understanding the call of God at this point, but a wonderful time to get to see this community for what it was, how to do ministry within this context, and understanding adaptability within that new location. really kind of securing us and sealing us into this church that we didn't know at that point that we were going to be moving. But it was then where God kind of started putting in the idea, maybe even, or the appreciation for ministry in New York City. Our son Jonah fell in love with it. I mean, the trains, the buildings, the cars, the noise, the people, the fast. That's that was all him. He loved it. 3 years old at the time, just could not stop talking about it when we got home. And so the next year when we went, he was again in love with it, and we had felt like God might be calling us towards something. Gail was driving one day at the beginning of summer by herself, which is unusual for a mom of two in general to drive anywhere by herself.
Or be by themselves
That's right.
at all.
That's it. And so she was driving somewhere, and she heard God say, "You're moving to New York."
Wow.
And at the time, she was just kind of like, okay, like I guess I need to go talk to Josh about this. But she ends up telling God, if this is real, if this is really what you're wanting, then you need to tell Josh. So she comes home, and she walks up and she says, hey, God told me something.
Oh, man.
Like,
Don't you just love those
I
moments?
know. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. So I naturally,
What is it?
what did God tell you? And then she goes, well, I told God if it was really from him, he had to tell you. And I was like, well, that's dumb. Like just if he told you something, aren't we married? Shouldn't you tell me? Like, this is how this works. And so for that next summer, we don't really talk about it. We just kind of, the next few months, we go to a lot of different places. We go to Moldova together. We go to Ireland together. We go to New York. And it was some of those moments when we were in Ireland, we're like, God, you going to call us to Ireland? Because that'd be pretty cool. We'll go there, That would be awesome. But after the summer, Gail comes up and restarts the conversation and goes, so, did God say anything to you this summer? And what I didn't tell her at the time was that as soon as she said, hey, God told me something, the very first thought that came into my mind was, we're moving to New York City. And there was no pre-conversation.
Wow.
There was no thought process. There was no dreaming about this. And so I told her, I said, this is what I think's supposed to happen. She's like, that's what I heard. And so we just said, all right, I guess if that's what's supposed to happen, that's what's supposed to happen. Let's figure it out. Let's start asking questions and going through the process.
Yeah.
And that's part of the story, again, that I hesitate to share in terms of like God speaking and hearing his voice of saying, go to New York, because that's not everyone's. And that's not what you have to hear in order to obey and follow God's call on your life. Jesus is listed as the Prince of Peace. It's not that you will have peace if you're following God. Like, he is the Prince of Peace. He's going to be with you. You're going to have peace. Just start walking with him and see where it goes. It's not that you have to wait and hear this voice of God moment to follow him. And I think maybe we had been following him for that amount of time, that he needed to do that for us in that moment to shift our mindset. The other cool part of this is that before we end up moving to New York, I think it was June of 2020, JJ gets cleared for all of her medical issues. Everything from the heart, the lungs, the brain, everything becomes stable. She goes off of all medication, and the doctors say, you really don't need to see us anymore. We went to one doctor's appointment, and the doctor just kept going, congratulations. And we're like, did we win something? Yeah. Like, is this the 100th patient here or something? Like, I don't understand. But
you win some VegoBears.
That's right. But in our mind, we had no idea, but they were expecting, whenever she came to that last appointment that we went to, maybe just a child uncognitive, just unable to communicate well, not walk around. But that was not her. No. She's a talker. She's a people person. She was moving. Wow. She understood. And so it was surprising to the doctors to see her journey, and to understand all the things that she had been going through, and then to say, I don't know that you need to see us anymore. And so it was almost as if at that point God firmly and finally released us, because there was some concern, like if she's got medical issues here in Texas, doctors that know her story, understand all of that stuff. We moved to New York, we got to start over on all of that.
Yeah.
But God released us from all of those things, and then said, okay, see, I told you, I'm going to take care of it. You know, everything's lining up. He's going to provide. And so, yeah, we did the crazy and moved. And I know my dad has talked, I think when he was on this podcast, about the Andy Griffith Show. Mm-hmm. And
I've never heard him talk about the Andy Griffith Show ever.
Or wrestling.
Or wrestling.
Yeah.
Yes. The two things that we hear about.
That's right. I mean, that was what I grew up with. That's the ideal life.
Yeah.
You know, living in Mayberry and understanding people and whatever. And that was always my ideal location. The exact opposite of Mayberry is probably New York City.
Yes.
It's probably New York City. And so it was not a fantasized place or location that we wanted to go and be a part of. It was God saying, this is where you're going to go. This is where I need you. This is the plan.
Well, so a couple of things, and maybe this is a good spot to kind of wind down, but first of all, your description of JJ in the doctor's office, I love that. Mm-hmm. And Lindsay and I got the privilege of being able to go and spend some time with Josh and Gail in New York and be around their family. And I've never been around two kids. You know, Jonah is in his element in New York, like you were saying. Right. You know, he just owns the city.
Yep.
I'm like nervous walking around New York, and this kid's just like parkour in the.
That's
you know,
right.
he's just he owns it.
Yep.
And I just never been around two kids that more obviously just emanate the joy of God everywhere they go. Like we got to go be with Gail when she picked JJ up from school, and like. She comes out into the, I don't know if you call it playground, but the courtyard area outside the school. And it's just like the atmosphere changes when she comes out. You know, it's just joy everywhere she goes. It's one of the most remarkable but tangible. I've just never been around a kid, two kids really, that more obviously emanate God's joy. So it's cool to, you know, just even in that doctor's office when they're expecting one story, it's like, here she is, full of the joy of the Lord with the other story. But I love the other part of this that I think is important, and not something I thought we would necessarily jump into today, but it's just the journey of obedience. And I love that you talked about, just first of all, we talked about the way that God speaks to you in a way that you can understand. But I think so often we hear stories about God speaking and us being obedient to go. And for some reason we hear those stories and our expectation is that it's this really smooth and easy, and God is obviously working and it's evident. And when God calls, it just flows.
Right.
And if somebody sits down and spends time with you guys, I think one of the things that you guys have always been so honest about that I think is really important is that no, it's not always easy. You're not always seeing fruit. Yeah. God's not always just audibly cheering you on and going, remember I called you here, you're still doing great. You know, you're every day, you've planted your life there, and you're waking up and making the decision every day that God's called me here. I'm going to be faithful here. I'm going to follow him here. Whether there's this feeling or fruit or, you know, anything like that or not, every day is that day of commitment. And I think we lose sight of that when we talk about being obedient, that being obedient is a commitment and a choice. And sometimes you're slugging it out.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of y'all's story, that you're always very honest about. What was that? And maybe this is a interesting place to just hand this to you, but you know, as people are, and I think genuinely they're going to hear your story, and I think it's going to stir in them a desire to be obedient. I mean, I'm sure you get that all the time, where somebody's like, man, I want my life to look like that, where it's surrendered and where God calls me and takes me. But take us into the not pretty days. take us into the hard days. Take us into the days where you're like, God, we don't love it here. I mean, you're like being honest too, of you saying, like, this is not my ideal situation.
Right.
You know, it's not my ideal city. What does obedience look like on those days? And how would you encourage somebody that is considering I want to just lay my life down before the Lord. I want him to use me. How would you coach them to do that over the long haul?
Yeah.
And not just in the moment of call, but then actually slugging that out day in and day out.
Right. I mean, it is always about, and if you spend much time with our family, you'll know we're Frozen fans. The movie Frozen and Frozen 2 and all of that stuff. And there's a song in Frozen 2 that talks about the next right thing. Just do the next right thing. And that is genuinely, when it comes to obeying the Lord, it's just take the next step. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be, miraculous. It is just taking the next step of, I'm going to either get up today and go, or I'm not. It's willing to say, if maybe I'm supposed to move here, well, then take a step towards it. And just keep stepping until God says, hey, this wasn't the right choice.
Yeah.
And that's what I've come to try and help others understand is, even if you make the wrong choice in pursuing like a path, if you say, oh, I need to move to New York City, and you pursue that with the intent of, this is what I think God is going to have for me, and if he says, no, that's not what I have for you, isn't it awesome that you're hearing from the Lord? Like, isn't it great that you still have a relationship and you're not wasting, like, he's not going to waste that.
Yeah.
He's still going to use it, but then you get to redirect. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
There's
that's
nothing,
not a failure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're still connected with the Lord. And so for us, in those difficult days, in the times where we aren't overly excited and we get crowded out by buildings and cement and all of that stuff, it really does go back to remembering that we are here. We are in New York City for a reason, that God has called us. It's really rooted in God has not released us from this. God has us here. I have a note section in my phone of all the things that God has done to get us to New York City. And so remembering what God has done and remembering who he is, it's being willing to trust in the Lord. And that's our thing. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll make your path straight. And so that's what we do. We try to acknowledge, God, this is what you're doing, and he's going to carve out that path, whatever that looks like. And we may not always make the right choices, and so be it. Thankfully, God is gracious and merciful and loving, and shares all of that with us. And so it's not overly complicated, and it's not crazy. It's just we just move until God says, no, go this way. I don't know how else really to put it. It's willing to discover and go on the adventure that God may be calling you to.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's two things. You're saying two incredibly important things. Take the next step. Don't try to take 10 at a time. Take the next step according to what you believe is being faithful to the call that the Lord's put in front of you. Just take the next step and be faithful where you're at.
Right.
And stop looking for don't always be looking for the next thing. You're gonna miss where you're at if this is where the Lord has put you. And so I don't know where that may hit you as you're listening. Maybe you're kind of in a season of asking God what's next. And I think I would just say, and I hope you're encouraged from this story, don't get too consumed with that. Be present where God has put you. Be faithful and take the next step in the place where God has you, and trust that when it's time, he'll take you out. I mean, it was when the Lord knew it was time to bring them to New York, that timing was made obvious. Yep. And then if God is calling you, if you do believe that, man, God's calling you and it doesn't quite make sense, but maybe he's put on your heart a place or a people, or there is a next step that doesn't quite fit, just take the next step in discovering what that might be. Talk to friends, put it before the Lord, bring it into the context of your church community. Just get that out in the open and start discerning what the next step might be. And whether it ends up there or not, the Lord will be faithful in directing your steps and get you to the places where he has for you. So we didn't get into tons of what's actually happening at the church. We were able to go and see, and it's just an extraordinarily wonderful place, just right there in the middle of all the happenings. It's a place that just exudes community and the warmth of God's people. It's a really remarkable place. You should go someday. You should go make a trip out. Josh and Gail would love to see you, or move. They're looking for people to move. Right. But we will put in our show notes.
Yeah.
We will put ways that you can keep up with their journey. Josh and Gail do a phenomenal job of allowing people a window in to see what's going on, and there are many ways that you can do that. There are also ways that you can support them. And so we will make sure we put links in the show notes for all of that. And of course, if you have questions just more specifically, please don't hesitate to call us up at the church, and we can get you in touch with Josh and Gail. They are wide open with the journey that the Lord has them on, and want as many people to share in that as possible. So we'll make sure we put that along. Josh, I really hope that on your way back, you get a silver platter of VegoBears.
Hey, I've signed up for the upgrade. You know, I'm on the list. If you want to upgrade me, I'm open for it.
Comfort
so we'll see what
Plus
happens.
is headed
That's
your
right.
way. Josh, thanks so much for being with us.
Appreciate you.
See you.